Friends with Lal Goel, which is brought to you by V4NEWS, Global TV, Malnadu TV, News Gaon Se, Samvad Sarokar News, Organ Donation India Foundation and Gyan. Our endeavor is to enlighten you about the current topics, including COVID-19, etc. But today, we are talking on a very, very special topic, and that is Women of the Year 2020. And before I will start that, I would like to inform everyone that today is a Ganesh Chaturthi, which is also known as Vinayak Chaturthi, is a Hindu festival celebrating the arrival of Lord Ganesha to earth from Kailash Parvat with his mother, goddess Parvati or Gauri. The festival is marked with the installation of Lord Ganesha's clay idols privately in homes or publicly on elaborate pandals. Observations, including chanting of Vedic hymns and Hindu texts such as prayers and vrats, that is fasting, offerings, and prasadam from the daily prayers that are distributed from the pandals to the community, include sweets such as modaks, as it is believed to be a favorite of Lord Ganesha. The festival ends on the 10th day after start, when the idol is carried in a public procession with music and group chanting, then immersed in a nearby body of water, such as a river or sea. In Mumbai alone, around 150,000 statues are immersed annually. Thereafter, the clay idols dissolves and Ganesh is believed to return to Mount Kailash to Parvati and Lord Shiva. The festival celebrates Lord Ganesh as the god of new beginnings and the remover of obstacles, as well as the god of wisdom and intelligence, and is observed throughout India and abroad also. We wish all of you a very happy Ganesh Chaturthi. Now, today's topic is Women of the Year 2020. Woman is an adult human female. Throughout human history, traditional gender roles have often defined and limited women's activity opportunities. Many religious doctrines stipulate certain rules for women, with restrictions loosening during the 20th century in many societies. Women have gained access to careers beyond the traditional homemaker and the ability to pursue higher education. Violence against women, whether within families or in communities, has a long history and is primarily committed by men. The movements and ideologies of feminism have a shared goal of achieving gender equality. The status of women in India has been subject to many changes over the span of recorded Indian history. Their position in society deteriorated early in India's ancient period, especially in the Indo-Aryan speaking regions, and their subordination continued to be refined well into India's early modern period. As of 2020, some women have served in various senior official positions in the Indian government, including that of the President of India, the Prime Minister of India, the Speaker of the Lok Sabha, etc. And today, we are going to have Women of the Year 2020. She is none other than Miss Charanya Kannan. Welcome, Miss Kannan, to our show. Miss Kannan was born and brought up in Chennai and moved to the US 5 years ago for her MBA at Harvard Business School. She did her engineering in Chennai from SSN institutions, and after that obtained a degree in marketing from SP Jain, Mumbai. She then joined the prestigious leadership program of the Tata Group, where she worked across strategic projects in Tata Hotel, that is Taj Hotels, Titan, and Tata Motors in India. She was sent to work for the Tata Trust in Jharkhand, where she spent 2 months in a rural Naxal district on improving education-related impact. Her time with the Tata Group was extremely formative. The TAS program is modeled as per the IAS program for the private sector. There she had a meeting with Mr. Ratan Tata, who explained the importance of ethical leadership. She was eventually posted in Tata Motors in South Korea. She was the youngest woman and the only woman to hold a leadership role in the 2,500 people company. She drove their international strategy, resulting in the company's expansion across 3 geographies. She then did MBA from Harvard Business School, where she graduated with honors. In Harvard, she had a 1-year-old child and was one of the 4 women at the university with 900 students to be a mother. Pursuing an education with a small child at home taught her a lot about time management, discipline, and patience. This year, she has been proclaimed as Woman of the Year 2020 by the Steve American Business Association for her pioneering work in behavioral strategy in the Silicon Valley. Welcome, Ms. Charanya Kannan, to our show. Now, we would like to know, because we have seen what you have done, but we would like to know, Woman of the Year 2020, Ms. Charanya Kannan, please. Please unmute yourself.
Hello, sir. Thank you for having me on your show. Hello, everyone. It's great to be here, especially on the auspicious day of Ganesha Chaturthi. I'd like to extend my warm wishes to everybody, even though I'm joining live from San Francisco in California. So it's still like Friday night for me. It's not Saturday morning for me. So we'll be celebrating the auspicious festival tomorrow here. So thank you for that great introduction. Yes, so I was born and brought up in Chennai, and I'm very proud of my roots there and my upbringing there. I grew up in a middle class family where I was taught the importance of always working hard, and being ethical and doing what is always right. And so that was which was imparted at a very young age in terms of how do you work hard. That I think has played a really significant role in terms of always trying to do what is the best, always trying to understand, how can we maximize outcomes for everybody, how do we improve societal justice. So from a very young age, I grew up to be a feminist, where I would read a lot and speak about for women's rights. And so I was very happy that you started this program by talking about that, because I think it's a very relevant conversation. And I'm glad that I'm in a position today where I can influence and inspire other women to sort of like pursue careers, be independent, be ambitious and not be apologetic for it. So I think I'm really happy and honored to be the Woman of the Year. So this award was proclaimed by the Stevie American Business Association. So the American Business Association, this was formed almost 15, 16 years ago, in a way to sort of commemorate those individuals who stand out, as a way to identify, encourage, and motivate, better outcomes for the society. And so when, in every year this award, they receive more than like 10,000 entries, and they receive, the one that I won was within the US, but broadly, the Stevie Business Awards is also given to professionals across the world. So you have almost 70 countries and corporates from all of these countries participating in these awards. And this award ceremony is open to any organization, which, they could be a small or a large organization. They could be working in the public sector, private sector. They could be in the for-profit space, non-profit space. So they have a wide range of categories, and they honor like a wide range of achievements in the work life, right from management to product development, to leadership. So if you look at this award, it's very prestigious because the professionals who won this award traditionally, they come from companies like Acer, Apple, Ford Motor, Procter and Gamble, and Samsung. So a lot of these big brands have constantly been winning these awards, and it's a very competitive process. So I enrolled. I think this award was given to me this month, but the process started almost a year before, where I was nominated by my company, by my management and the leadership, and they all had to like endorse me, recommend me. And then I went ahead and I spoke about what are the achievements I did in my workplace. So often it's easy if you are if you are a CEO of a small company. Yes, it becomes very easy to define your achievements, but when you're employee of a larger organization, you really need the support of leadership to sort of encourage you, and inspire you to do that. And PayPal has been a great company in the Silicon Valley, which constantly speaks about encouraging women and bringing more women into leadership roles. And so PayPal has been extremely supportive in pushing me in this journey to get this award. And so we submitted the application in December, and it was a very long winded judging process. Some of it was also impacted by COVID this year, but you have, every entry is judged by at least 12 judges, and these judges have a minimum of 15 years, 20 years of experience, and they're leaders in across multiple industries. So these judges could come from several industries like the retail sector, the technology sector, automotive sector, banking, finance, government. So you have a mix of judges with a lot of like esteemed qualifications, and they review each of these applications separately. They put in their comments, they put in their judging scores. So the way then the awards are computed is they estimate, the score and the commentary given by these judges. And often, if you look at it, any score, it's scored out of 10, and any entry that gets 9 or above is becomes like the Woman of the Year, the Gold Award, which was given to me. So I'm really honored that there are 10 esteemed judges who looked at my profile, and thought that they could award the highest possible marks for in the category that I applied to. And this award is also special to me this year, because usually you will have two or three women who are sharing the Woman of the Year award in the consumer products category, but this year I'm the only woman to have won that award. And as you can see, my awards are here. So you might wonder why there are two awards. I also won another category called the Management Professional of the Year. So the work I did at PayPal has, I was given an opportunity to do highly impactful work that drove the revenue of the company. And partly that was facilitated because of all the training and the mentorship I received at the Tata Group and all my learnings there. And of course, not to mention Harvard Business School played a very important role in shaping how I think about business, in shaping how I think about, driving outcomes. After Harvard, I also worked for a company called BCG. This is a strategy consulting company. And that company, it was a brilliant training ground where for 2 years, they give you feedback and training as you're working every day to sort of improve. So sometimes it could be hard to listen to that feedback because on a week by week basis, you know what you're doing wrong. And so sometimes it could be discouraging, but you really have to have a mindset of growth, where you're constantly thinking about how can I be better, how can I do better. And slowly as you build that muscle of how can you bring better outcomes, I think all of that training has resulted in me being able to work at PayPal and contribute to the level that I could today, which resulted in me winning this award. Some of the other winners of this TV American Business Awards, for instance, like one is the CEO, or one person is the CEO of Hilton Software. Another person is the head of Bank of America. Another person is the CEO of United Imaging, a senior director of Cisco Systems. So they've all won some other categories and some other awards. So it's a very prestigious award handed to lots of people in the leadership role, and I'm definitely proud and privileged to be receiving it in 2020. Although I might add, usually the award ceremony happens in a very grand way, like the Oscar ceremony in New York or Los Angeles. This year, unfortunately, because of COVID, the award ceremony happened on a Zoom call like this. And the awards were sent over courier, which felt a little bit, the feeling is very different when you're on stage and everybody's seeing you and you can get the award. That feeling would have been really nice and encouraging. But we're in the middle of a pandemic this year, and so being sensitive of that and aware of that, I guess a lot of people are not even this privileged to be able to speak of professional achievements when jobs are difficult to come by during this pandemic. So for all of this, I'm grateful at
Uh,
large.
Thank you and congratulations, Ms. Kannan, for receiving such a prestigious award, and that too with so much competition. Ms. Kannan has mentioned how she started her journey from India. She is always thankful that India has given the knowledge and her whatsoever she has achieved today because of her roots, Indian roots. And she has also mentioned about the training which she got in Tata's, and that helped her for shaping herself for doing lots of good work, because she is working in a company now which is PayPal. And she says when she has worked there, she's working now there because of the her roots and her training from India. She could deliver the what they expect. And she also mentioned that this award is a very prestigious award which is started about 15-16 years old. And according to her, this award, there is a lots of competition. All the top companies of the world, business houses of about 70 countries are participating in this award. And because of her recommendation and the nomination sent by the PayPal, she got the award. And according to her, that judges, those judges who are judging, are also very experienced judges with at least 15 to 20 years of experience. And all the 10 judges have to give the scores about 9. Then only you are able to going to get the award. But because she got from everywhere the maximum marks, and that's why she won the gold category, that is the topmost in this category, in this award ceremony. But she was just having some you can say she's repenting only one thing, that this award ceremony, which used to take place in a very grand ceremony like Oscars, either at New York or Los Angeles, this time because of the COVID pandemic, it has to be done on the Zoom platform, and she has to receive the awards through courier. But she says this is this time, because of the COVID-19, one cannot feel anything bad, because there are so many job losses and whatnot happening. So she is happy, and she is very thankful to all the things, where the training which she got even from her earlier company. She mentioned the BCG, if I have heard correctly, and she says that the training which they have given, that's why she proved herself that she can achieve this award. And she says that all the top companies of the world are participating, whether it's Apple, whether it's Samsung, Hilton, many top companies and top brands were eyeing this award. But we are very happy that from India, one girl won this award with laurels. I must say that today's days is a really auspicious days, not because first thing is because of the Ganesh Chaturthi, and secondly because we have Miss Charanya Kannan with us, and she is definitely going to inspire many of Indians, and especially the women, the girls who wants to become big, and they will know that it is not that you cannot. Anyone can become big. Only thing is you have to be focused and you have to be devoted to your work. Now, I would like to ask Ms. Kannan, you are working as a behavioral strategy expert, head consumer insights at PayPal, Silicon Valley, California, USA. Now, can you just explain to our viewers what it means, what is your designation means, and what is this behavioral strategy expert? First, what is your designation means, because it says head consumer insights PayPal, insights, head consumer insights. What it means, Ms. Kannan, please. Please unmute.
Sure. So I think that's a very relevant question for this conversation. So I lead customer insights and market research strategy at PayPal. So when you have a very large organization like PayPal, which is in the payment space, what is very critical for the company is the first thing is the product that you have. You know how good the product is. And how do you know, like, the product that you have and the strategy that you have is the best. So this by the one reason why every company exists is to serve their customers, serve their consumers. Gandhi also said like how companies, consumers are really customers are what is like driving companies. And so my role is really to understand who our customers are. And this sounds very simple, but it's actually very complicated, because if you think of PayPal's customers, they're not just in the United States, they're across so many different countries. And when we say PayPal customers, you have consumers like you or me who are using PayPal to make payments, but you also have merchants, you have many small business owners who are relying on PayPal to get their money on an everyday basis. You have many medium-sized businesses which are relying on PayPal. You have many large enterprises, so Uber, or Airbnb, all of these companies, they use PayPal to process their payments in the back end. So all of these groups of people are our customers. So anybody who is using our platform and generating revenue for PayPal is a customer or a consumer. And this landscape is constantly changing every day. So if you look at, you have been doing this show because of COVID. And if you see, because of COVID, what has happened, people are not able to go to these stores in person. We are all mostly sheltering in place at homes, and online delivery or ordering online has become very, very huge. So the last couple of years, the surge in online, if you look at the year-on-year growth of online payments, it's been about 3% to 4%. But suddenly this year, because of the pandemic, it's the online payments has grown to almost 15%. So it's grown so much, which means your consumer is changing on an everyday basis. So it becomes very important as a company to understand how does the consumer use your product. So only then you can serve them the best. You have to understand who they are, what they want from the product, what is the right amount to charge them, because you cannot overcharge them. And how do they use it? So what is the context in which they use the product? When do they think of the product? Do they use your product when they wake up in the morning, or do they use your product when making a purchase transaction or a payment? So holistically understanding who the consumer is becomes very, very critical. Also, if you look at the competitive landscape, we have many competitors in the US right now. We have Apple Pay, we have Samsung Pay, many companies like Walmart, Starbucks, they're all developing their own payment processing platforms. And if you take India, for example, Paytm is just so big and so large in India. If you take China, there's Alipay, which is very, very big in the payment space. So there are competitors, and traditionally, like PayPal was started by Elon Musk almost 20 years ago. Many people don't know this surprising fact, but Elon Musk, who is the founder of Tesla now, he was the founder of PayPal. And so 20 years, in this 20 years, PayPal has been the leader in the payment space. But the last 2-3 years, so many competitors, especially in India, where the startup ecosystem is booming, and you have a lot of entrepreneurs who are doing so much in the startup space. So the leadership position of PayPal gets challenged when you have a lot of competitors in the marketplace. It's great for a marketplace to have a lot of competition, because only then the consumer gets the best offering, the consumer has the ability to choose. And so what do I do as a part of the consumer insights team is I have to understand, what do these customers think about PayPal? What do they think about Apple Pay? What do they think about Paytm? Why will they choose one over another? Every time they're thinking of choosing, how can we make them choose us? And if they don't want to use us, what is the reason that they're not using us? And what is the biggest value that we add to them? And how can we continue to add that value? So, if you think of a college student who might be using this app to pay friends when they go out for dinners, but that person in 10 years will have a family and they'll be having children. So now the value to them is not the same. It's not like going out with friends and making that payments. Now the value to them is something different, like paying their child's piano teacher, for example, with the app. So constantly understanding the age, the demographics, the usage profile of these consumers, who they are, and how we can potentially reach out to them with the right marketing message, it becomes a very critical component of every company, even for product development. So when you think of, as consumers, we download apps from the app store, we use them, but just that one act of payments, there's like many thousand transactions happening behind it. When you click a button saying pay, there are so many things happening in the background. We have to verify, are you the right person? Is there any fraud happening? And then we have to work with your credit card transaction, your bank, to authorize the payment. We have to verify that the merchant is that you're paying to is not, there's no fraud or authentication issues involved there. So it's a very complex process of payments that all happens in like a few microseconds, and that is not easy. We have 20,000 people in this company working towards that day and night. And so it's constantly about, how do you even make it even more faster for people, because people are losing their patience nowadays in the age of internet. So it becomes very critical to think of all of these. And one interesting thing I like to share is, if you think of PayPal, the reason why it exists is, when you have internet payments, imagine you're buying shoes or clothes, something like that online. If it asks for a credit card and you're sitting on your sofa, you're making that payment. Most people don't want to get up, go to the shelf, pick up their purse, take the credit card out, and make that payment. So because of that, they don't make that payment. They close the browser and they move away. So the biggest pain point that PayPal solves, and it might seem very funny, but it's a $15 billion business because of this, which is, people don't want to get up and go take their credit cards. And by enabling that quick button there, where they have this pre-saved information that they can just click and finish that payment, and doing that in a very trustworthy and secure way, in a way that people can trust, knowing that they're protected, is such a big value addition to consumers on a day-to-day basis. So that is the core of why PayPal exists as a company. So as the head of customer insights, and market strategy, like in my team, some of the work that I lead is trying to understand these customers across geographies, across product lines, understanding what they want, who they are, how they perceive competition, and how can we constantly improve the value that we deliver to some of these customers. And so when we think of some of the work that I did in the last 1 year, for example, I built a very heavy analytical model which helped the company understand, well, what are some ways by which we can make sure like people don't use competitors but they come to us. So I was able to quantify that, and that resulted in driving a lot of value, where we were able to take about 5-6% of our consumers and stop them from switching to competition and stay with us, which was a huge value add for the company. Some of the other work that I did is, PayPal went and acquired a payments company in China. So it's my team that has been saying for several months that, because that I come from an emerging market, we've been insisting like the importance of some of these emerging markets. And so a lot of like, constantly listening to your customers will give you these ideas and strategic inputs, which will help drive a lot of value for the company. Now you asked me another question, like what is behavioral strategy and why? What is behavioral science? Like what?
No, I will just stop you here, Ms. Kannan, because I just want to summarize to our viewers what Ms. Kannan has said, that she is the head of the consumer insights at PayPal. And she says her role is to understand the behavior of the consumer or the customers. And she says that the business which was started at PayPal in 20 years back, when the company was set up by Elon Musk, who is also the founder of the one of the topmost company in the world, that is Tesla Motors, which is manufacturing the all electric motors, leader in that field. And she says that in 20 years, the earlier the business was very low, it was hardly 3% before the COVID. Now, after the COVID, it has increased to 15%. It's a so much big jump which has come in the last 5 6 months because of the COVID, because the habits have changed. The customer is not going to the shop, rather they are ordering online and they are making payment online. And now because of this, and otherwise also, so many competitors are there, whether it's a Apple Pay or Samsung Pay there. And in India we have Paytm, and China we have Alipay. So she says that when so much competition is there, her role is to see to retain the existing customers and to enroll new and new customers. So it's a very tricky but a very tough task. It's not that easy. But she says that she's having a very good team, and the total PayPal strength in the USA is about 20,000 people working. It's a globe in PayPal. So they are working, and she has also explained that when we are pressing one button, click of a button, just to make the payment, how many things happened in that microseconds, which they have designed in such a way that they have to check whether it's a fraud or committed or the genuine payment and whatnot. So she is basically her role is to see that the customers who are existing customers, they should get all the facilities. They must be giving all that what they require, because she says the person who was 10 years back was a student, his or her priority was to go to restaurant, eat and make the payment. But afterwards, now he's employed somewhere, he's married, he's having kids, so now he has to make the payments to many other organizations like piano teaching and whatnot in USA and other countries also. So they have to customize those things. They have to enroll those clients also, which will be bad for the purpose of the retaining their existing client. So this type of thing which she is doing with the help of her team is really remarkable. And she says that now they are acquiring or merging the other companies of the payment gateway. For that also, she has to work and see to it that those companies will come in their fold. Yeah, thank you, Ms. Kannan. Now you can give the reply of my next question, that is, what is this behavioral strategy expert which you are? Please unmute yourself.
Yeah, thank you for that great summary, sir. So, behavioral strategy is a very interesting field. So, I was introduced to this field, I would say about 4 years ago, when I read this book called Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. So, Daniel Kahneman, he won a Nobel Prize in economics for his revolutionary work in terms of like behavioral science and defining it for us. So, I'll explain to viewers in a very simple way, what behavioral science is and why it is important. If you think of economics, like in the 1960s and 70s, always the assumption is that human beings act rationally. So the assumption is that humans are very intelligent, so if you give them two choices, they will always pick the choice that is rational, that is right. And that's the theory. Like, we always assume that humans do the right things, and we assume any of our economics theory, and therefore all of business and commerce is built on that assumption. Now, Daniel, since 1970, he and his friend Amos were challenging that. So they were psychologists from Israel, and they were studying a lot of like human behavior, and they felt humans are not rational. And it feels like on a day-to-day basis, yes, we know humans are more emotional, they're not very rational. But it was like science and economics did not consider that at all. It assumed like humans will behave rationally. And so Daniel and Amos, through all of their experiments, they were able to prove that the human brain is not reliable at all. And they were able to sort of like build a theory around it, saying, here are several ways where the brain commits mistakes. And this is not just like you or me, but everybody, like even the most smartest person, or the CEOs, or the presidents and prime ministers. So everybody, like the brain works in a very deceptive way. So this whole theory is about understanding how the human mind works, and how do you prevent those errors from coming into decision making. So if you think of your brain, you can think of it as like two different parts. The first one is the quick or the intuitive part of the brain, where if you think of a problem, for example, like 2 plus 2, immediately without thinking, the answer is 4, right? Or if you think of like taking a shower, or boiling milk every day, or making coffee that you do, your mind is thinking something else in the background, and your hand is automatically doing these tasks every day. So these are all the simple quick tasks that comes very easily to human beings. So behind you I see the word organ. Like I don't need to put effort in my brain to read that word organ, like automatically, because for 30 years I've been reading, like my mind just automatically reads that word, and I don't even notice my mind is doing that. So that is the fast part of my brain, which is subconscious, it's quick, I don't even realize it's happening, and my brain will continue to work in that way. There's another part of my brain which is slow, it thinks a lot, it's deliberate. So, for example, if I ask you, what is 3,400 times 27? um, of course, like I can't even do that calculation mentally, but even something simpler, like what is 432 plus 586, right? You don't naturally instantly know the answer. Your brain has to stop for a few seconds. If you're doing, like, let's say you're making idlis in the morning, very busy doing that, and then somebody asks you this question, you can't do that and do the math simultaneously. You have to stop, one, concentrate, focus, and do that. So when you stop everything else you're doing to focus and think, that's when your brain works, the slow part of your brain. So that's called system 2. The fast one is called system 1, the slow one is called system 2. And because we understand like this is how the brain works, we are now able to say, we are able to identify mistakes that the brain makes. So things like, for instance, comparing interest rates, or deciding which stock to invest in, or recalling your bank account number, for instance. All of these, it requires your brain to slow down. It consumes a lot of energy. Your brain needs a lot of energy to do those things. So all of those is system 2. So for example, let me give you a very easy example. We did this experiment where we went to people and asked, okay, take 1 kg of iron, 1 kg of cotton, which is heavier. Immediately lots of people will just say iron, because they just hear iron and cotton and their brain instantly reacts and says iron. Whereas if they just think for 1 second, slow down, they realize this is 1 kg of iron and this is 1 kg of cotton. So your brain could sometimes deceive you into making the wrong decisions. Another example that I often like to give is, for example, like when we say the word doctor, when you say the word engineer, you just assume that must be a man. Whereas when you say teacher, or when you say nurse, or a parent, you assume that must be a female, right? So that is not right at all, but your brain tends to be wired in that way, because probably that's what you've seen in the world the last several decades. So that's an example of how your brain could be wrong, but it's quick and it's wrong. So our brain likes to construct a lot of stories, and our brain does not like to think mathematically or work mathematically. Another example I can give is, for example, let's say Geeta is a teacher, and Geeta loves mentoring children. She is into art and poetry, and she loves music. She lives in India. So this is what we know about Geeta. And then I give you two options here. So one is, the first one is Geeta takes math tuition at home, and the second option is Geeta takes math tuition at home and she's also a music teacher. So this question, when I ask a lot of my students and people, they immediately say, well, okay, so Geeta, she is a teacher and she likes music and she's a mother of two kids, therefore it's very likely that Geeta is a teacher, and she does math tuition at home and she's also a music teacher. This is what most people say. But mathematically, that is incorrect, because mathematically, the probability that Geeta is a teacher is much higher than the probability that she's a math tuition teacher and also a music tuition teacher. So for two things to go together, the probability is very lower. So if your brain understood mathematics, it's easy for your brain to pick option one. But because your brain does not think mathematically, your brain picks option two because your brain likes stories. And I just told you a story about Geeta, so you immediately listen to that story and you pick an answer which goes well with the story. So our brain likes to think in stories, so which means your brain is not correct at all. So the fundamental assumption that human beings are rational is very wrong. We make wrong decisions all the time. All of us make wrong decisions. As a society, collectively, we make a lot of wrong decisions. And I can give you some, examples of those wrong decisions. Daniel Kahneman has identified how where the brain exactly goes wrong, and gives you all of those scenarios so you can be better aware of how your mind works and prevent your mind from making those mistakes. So one thing is called confirmation bias. So for example, if you think a political leader is great, and then you see a news saying the political leader is great, your mind will immediately say, yes, I knew that, and your mind will confirm that. If you see another news saying that political leader is corrupt, he or she is not a good person, your mind will not try to understand the truth. Your mind will just reject that piece of news. Whereas a rational mind should be taking a look at that and saying, hey, I thought he was good, but it says it's corrupt. Like, let me try and understand like why there's a difference. And your brain should think like that, but your brain doesn't. Your brain immediately rejects information that it doesn't like. It accepts information that it already knows. So that itself is a big way in which the brain does not, it deceives human beings. A second thing is halo effect. In India, we like to say, IIT, IIM. If somebody is from IIT, if somebody is from IIM, we like to think, oh my God, like, yes, anything that they say will be correct. So that's called the halo effect, where just because somebody is from a certain brand, like if somebody is a Google engineer, for example, we all think that person must be very, very smart. But that is not true. Like, we know so many people who are not from IIT, who are not from Google, who are very, very smart and intelligent. So there are so many biases like this, and I can walk through another 5 6 biases like this where the brain makes mistakes. But basically, Daniel and his research partner Amos, they've worked for 30 years to identify what are the different errors that the brain makes while making these quick errors. And they've been able to make that as a study called behavioral science. And for that work, they won the Nobel Prize in economics. And that work has been so powerful and so impactful that people like me, we take that work and we apply it into different fields. And the result is so drastically different, because if you take any field like strategy or management, mostly the principles and practice haven't changed in 20 years. So when you take a new concept like this and when you apply it to an existing field, it gives you a lot of inspiring ways in which you can bring about change that you couldn't do in the last 20 years. I can speak about some of these biases more, but I just want to pause and ask, sir, would you like to summarize right now? And maybe the next question could be,
Yes,
yeah.
yes, yes, Mr. Kannan, because it's a bit technical, but how you explain it looks very easy. And you said that the behavioral science or the behavioral strategies, because Mr. Daniel, who was an economist, who has proved at that time, he wanted to say that what we think and what we do is not correct always. And according to him, the human brains are not always correct. And he has given many examples at that time, which she has repeated. And she says that before him, everybody feels that human brains are the best thing, and whatsoever anybody decide from that, it goes without saying that the decision is correct. But according to her, as well as Mr. Daniel, Mr. Daniel, then she's following Mr. Daniel, that it is not correct. because there are two parts of the brain. One is very quick and another is slow. And the quick is whenever you see something or you want to have to take a decision, you immediately say, this is this. But the slow, when there is something comes, then you have to apply your mind. And that application of mind is required if you have to give the answer. And that is what they say, is that many times it happens that we are giving all wrong answers. Rather, according to Mr. Daniel, our decisions are not correct. And we have, and even they have given the examples of the politicians. If you like one politician, you always want to hear good news about him, positive news. And you will immediately react, yes, yes, I know that he or she is such a good person. But if there is a wrong news about the corruption or anything where he or she is involved, you will not digest and you will say, no, my brain says no, I am not agreeing on that. And that is why, where you are not using your brain, you are using your emotions. So according to her, this behavior is the science which one has to understand. And this is not a easy thing, because if you understand this, that how the human being is dealing with the behavior, then you can solve many problems. But now, before you move to this thing, I just have one thing to ask you. Is there any difference about the brain and the mind, or we both are same? And or there is any difference between brain and mind? Because we generally say my mind says this. We never use word my brain says. We say my mind says like this. I am applying my mind. So, Miss Kannan, can you just then you can give the further your this thing about the your expertise. Yes, Miss
Yeah, I
Kannan,
think
please.
that is a great question, sir. So when we say brain, brain and mind are largely interchangeable. But typically, when you think of psychologists, they use the word mind. Mind is a little more metaphorical. It refers to the thought process that goes into how the brain works. And brain is the physiological manifestation of what we call the brain. So if you take a psychiatrist, for instance, or a neurologist, they use the word brain more often, because they're literally referring to the physical organ, which is the brain. So for the context of behavioral science, though, the word brain and mind are interchangeable, because this is a slightly technical field with its roots in how neuroscience, how your neurons work in your mind. We tend to use the word brain more.
Okay. Thank you, Miss Kannan. Now you want to continue? Yes, please. Or you want
Yeah,
me
so
to? Yes. You please continue.
this is a very interesting topic. So I have many examples of how the human brain can be very deceptive. Let's say, like, this month, two planes crash. So after that, sir, do you think you'll take a plane? Let's say two Air India flights crash this month. Will you take another Air India flight, say, tomorrow?
Hmm. Yes, it's a good question. After the recent crash of Air India in Kerala, many have decided to switch over from Air India to other airline. Yes.
Yeah. So they switch over from Air India to other airlines. They switch from airlines to trains. Like, there is data to show that after an airplane crash, for some time, airline sales drops and people
But
prefer.
if the crash is of domestic, but if it was because it was a international crash, so that's why they have to switch over to other airline. They can't come by the train to India.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. So there's also the question of availability, but largely we find that when people's confidence in airlines decreases when they think of a crash. But actually, if you think mathematically, there is the probability of a plane crashing is always the same. It is not dependent on whether other planes crashed or not. So you can, just because you had two plane crashes this month, it does not mean your plane is going to crash. Anytime you board a plane, there is like a 0.0001% that the plane might crash. That's the probability. That number is not going to change because that number is not dependent on other plane crashes. Right? So, but people's mind cannot process that mathematics behind that. There's just like fear is an emotional component that drives the way we think. So that fear will immediately make us think, oh, no, 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 I'm not going to do any planes because they crash a lot, so I'll take trains. But it's not very logical. It's not a very rational thing to do. And similarly, there are many things like this. For example, if you take CEOs, there's something called the confidence effect, where the more somebody has achieved, the more they think of themselves as an expert in the field, the less flexible they are to listening to newer ideas. So usually, established CEOs make a lot of mistakes in their decisions because they're overconfident. They think, I've done this before, I know this, I don't have to listen to other data, I don't need other people's opinions, my intuition is right. And often we find that, if you take an amateur who makes a decision, and this amateur consults a lot of data, looks at data and takes a decision, whereas an expert just out of judgment takes a decision, there's a very high chance that the judgment can go wrong. And this has been proven through a lot of like experiments. And if you take an example, for example, we think a CEO is successful, right? And then we think the company is successful because the CEO, she is flexible, she's very decisive, so that's why the company is successful. But the very next year, if the company fails, you will immediately say, oh, that's because the leader is confused, the leader is rigid. Like the same word flexible in a positive situation becomes confused in a negative situation. The same word decisive in a positive situation becomes rigid in a negative situation. So, depending on outcomes, our brain just changes our narrative of what the truth is. So the brain just works in a really in a strange way. So if you're a doctor, and since you work largely with organ donation, you must be familiar with this. When you say the odds of survival are 90%, people are more happy to hear that, as opposed to you say, the chances of dying of this because of the surgery is 10%. Right. So the way you frame the message is very important for the brain, because the brain thinks very emotionally, the brain doesn't think mathematically. When the COVID outbreak happened, we were, the cases were doubling every single day. And what does that mean? Like, it literally means like, there's this ancient story in Vedic mathematics where somebody asked for, when the king said, you can take any award from me, that person said, put 1 grain of rice in the first square of chess to double that grain of rice. And the king was laughing, and the king was like, why don't you take gold or silver? Like, why do you want to take 1 grain of rice or 2 grains of rice? And by the time they got to the middle of the board, they did not have enough rice grains in the entire kingdom to fill the board. So the mind doesn't understand exponents and doubling of numbers. So when COVID outbreak happened, lots of leaders in government did not understand the criticality of the situation, because they did not have the statistical mind. And it wasn't doctors who first said it's a raging pandemic. It was statisticians who came out and first said it's a very big pandemic, right? So the mind doesn't think mathematically. Like, you have trained statisticians who are logical, but people like you and me, it's hard for us to be logical. We are driven by emotions. Another outcome of this, as I was telling you, when our brain thinks and slows down, it consumes a lot of energy. So there was this very interesting experiment done where you had judges in Israel who were granting parole to people. So the judge will come at like 8 a.m. in the morning till 5 a.m. Every 15 minutes, they'll see one criminal and they'll decide, okay, do I give him parole today or do I send him back to jail? And they found that before lunchtime, like when the judges are hungry, around 12 o'clock, less paroles were granted. So even if you had somebody who served their time well, like if they came before when the judge was hungry, the judge did not have enough, like, mental energy to think about that, and they'll just deny that parole. And I'm sure many of us have done that, where if you're an examiner and you're correcting answer papers, you're correcting 200 answer papers, your brain just loses energy, and beyond a point it cannot do the same thing again and again. So just by drinking glucose, for instance, they found that the energy or the decision making capability was improved. So a quick tip for viewers is, if you're taking a very important decision in life, never take it when you're hungry, because your brain will just shut down, not have enough energy, it will take the wrong decisions. Always have glucose or sugar before you're taking life changing decisions. So this, you can see what an interesting field this is.
Yes, Ms. Kannan, it's really very interesting. And one thing which you have mentioned, according to you, the brain take decisions full of emotions. Although
Yeah.
the theory was like this, that I am taking decisions from my mind or the brain, I am not taking decisions from my heart. So earlier we used to always say this is from my heart, this decision is from my heart. I have not applied my brain. But now what you are saying is even the brain is also taking decisions based on your emotions, and that is not always correct. And she has given lots of examples. She says that if there is a crash of any plane, and people think that we should not now fly, we should go by train or by bus or other other transport mode. That is wrong, because the probability will remain same. And she has also said that she has given an example of a the king, that somebody asked that, okay, you want to award me, you just give me the rice, one rice in one of the chessboard, and one piece, and then the next one is a double, and that then again doubling. So, but king was laughing at that time, but then he understood that within no time, when the entire rice of the kingdom was empty. And she has given this thing in context with the COVID-19, when it started, and it started doubling every day or every second day. The doctors and the politicians were not, or the leaders were not accepting this, that it can be a pandemic. But the statisticians came forward and they said it's a pandemic, because if you will not stop, or it will double like this, it is going to be a very, very big thing, and which we all are watching today. So it's a very, very interesting thing, Ms. Kannan. But I'm sure that the way you are explaining looks very easy, but it's not that easy. So we would like to know, how do you apply it at your work? Please unmute. Please unmute. I'm putting you on mute because some disturbance comes. That's why I put you on mute. So whenever,
Okay.
yes, please.
So the application part is what is revolutionary. So when one of the applications for this was with the US pension. So in early 1980s, not many people were saving up for retirement, which is called the pension fund in the US. So because they had to opt in. So you had to go get a form in an office and say, yes, you're opting in for this pension fund. And many people will not do that. So ideally, if a human being is very rational, they should know that after 60 years, they're not going to have money. And therefore, from the time they're 20, they should start saving for that. But as I said, the human brain is very emotional. At a young age, you don't care about old age and you don't think of saving for an old age. So, and the act of going somewhere, filling a form, even if it's just one signature, people will not do that because, it's not a priority for them. So one application here, which was revolutionary, was they made everybody opt in. And they said, if you don't want to opt in for it, you have to go to the office and opt out. So because of that, you suddenly had this mass enrollment. Those who did not want it had to opt out of it. And so that way they were able to improve the pension saving habit of people. Another way where this was able to be designed was, in some of the poorer schools in the United States where they offer food, they found that because of the habits of these children from some of the less wealthy families, the children always pick the unhealthy food and they don't take the healthy food. So they started rearranging where they would just keep the healthy food um, at at um, at an arm's length where it's quick and easy to take, and the unhealthy food at a greater height where it's difficult to reach and take. And then automatically, like, many of the children were able to change their behavior to pick the healthy food. So instead of giving choice to the kids as like, do you want a banana or do you want chips? You give the choices, do you want a banana or do you want an apple? Therefore, you're giving them the idea of choice, you're constructing choice, but you're making that more healthy, you're nudging them towards healthy choices. So this is called choice architecture, and this was a very important outcome of this. And because you work in organ donation, I think this would be very relevant for you. And we do a lot of campaigns in India to get people to enroll for organ donation. And one way to make it here, to apply the principles of pension fund for organ donation in India, would be, opt everybody in. If you don't want to donate organs, opt out.
Miss Kannan, I would like to stop here. I would like to say, yes, this is what is happening in USA. Because in USA, everyone is, once he's opt-in, means opt-in. And in UK, now they have passed in Europe that you have to opt out. Otherwise, everyone is deemed to be opt-in. Okay,
Yeah,
that is
yeah.
opt-out system, which is now in Europe, and UK has passed this, and it has become a law from 20th of May.
Okay.
Unfortunately, in India, in organ donation, I'm talking, there is no such law. There is a thing that you can voluntarily fill up the form, but the decision lies with the family. After anybody declare brain dead, if whether the organs to be donated or not, that has to be decided by the immediate family of that person who's declared as a brain dead. So until unless we will also have this thing which you have said, that like in pension, if we will say that everyone is opt-in and if you want to opt out, which is now in Europe and in UK, and that's why the mortality rate is very less there. Today in India, we are losing about more than 1,500 people every day. They are dying. Okay, in India, while COVID, we have just touched about 1,000 per day. So for want of organ in India, 1,500 people are dying. In UK, total 700 people died last year in the
Wow.
whole year. Although UK is 20 times less populated than us, but it will be about 14, 15,000 in a year. In USA, the figure was 7,500 in the whole year. So you can imagine that India, so you being an Indian and you are there and you are thinking about organ donation, it's a very great thing. I am sure that somebody who is of your line, who is a behavioral strategy, will definitely give these figures to our leaders in India and the medical fraternity, so they will also apply this opt-out system in India in such a way that then that probability will go down and our mortality rates will go down definitely. Yes, Mrs. Kannan.
That is the hope. Maybe by having these conversations, we can create more awareness around this. Maybe somebody somewhere will see this, and hopefully, this can turn into a movement for that opt out system in India as well. So we don't have to lose 1,500 lives.
Every day.
Yeah,
Every day.
every day, 1,500 lives. Yeah. Um,
Yes,
e- um,
more than 5 lakhs people are dying every year.
Yeah, and that is
Yes.
just a sad state of affairs.
Yes.
We like human life. I find is more valuable in a developed country than I know. India is working on a lot of other issues, but hopefully we'll be able to get to this soon. And so that is just an example of how we can apply behavioral strategy to have these marvelous outcomes at a very large scale. So specifically, in terms of behavioral strategy, so I apply behavioral science in the field of strategy. So what is strategy? A company's long-term plans defines what a strategy is. So if you take an example, like I worked on Tata Nano when I was with the Tata Group. So Tata Nano was a brilliant idea. So many viewers might remember that at the time that Tata Nano was launched, like the whole world was very surprised. It was supposed to be this 1 lakh car, which is $1,000 car. There was usually we have to spend so much for marketing and publicity and branding. For Tata Nano, we didn't have to spend anything. Like every newspaper wanted to talk about us, every media agency, not just in India, but around the world, consumers were talking about us. So we got so much marketing, so much free publicity as the $1,000 car. And so what happened is because we thought, well, okay, everybody's talking about us, great. Like when the car is launched, it's going to sell, like it's going to sell out quickly. But when it was launched, it did not sell. And we tried again and again for like 2 years, 3 years, tried changing the distribution channel, the marketing channel. Finally, the Nano wasn't, it didn't turn out to be a good decision as we thought it would be. And the reason is it's because when everybody started saying $1,000 car, people started thinking it's a cheap car. When people buy a car, they want it to be expensive. They want, there's a pride associated with it. Families in India save up for 5 years, 6 years, 7 years to buy a car. So there's a prestige aspect associated with it. And that's how the mind works. Like that's the emotional component of the mind which works. And so emotionally, the brain was just thinking, okay, this is a cheap car. This is a 1 lakh car. I don't want this. And so that not understanding that behavioral aspect ended up being such a strategic mistake for Tata Motors on the issue of Tata Nano. And so if you think of like a lot of decisions which are very emotion based, so the history of Taj Hotels is very successful right now, but actually Taj Hotels at the time that it was formed, JRD Tata, he was not allowed into a hotel by the Britishers. So he was like, you don't have to let me into a hotel. I will build my own hotel for Indians, and that's how the Taj Hotel was born. So it was a very emotional decision that resulted in the birth of a big brand like this. So I'm not saying emotional decisions are always wrong. Emotional decisions do lead to some of the right decisions, but you have to weigh in your choices. Another example is in 2002, Blockbuster in the United States was a very, very big brand. So they would sell these DVDs. They had these stores where you can go rent DVDs, watch a movie, then you have to return the DVDs in the store, like a book lending library. You have to pay for the DVDs. At that time, Netflix was a very small company. And so they went to Blockbuster and they said, hey, we're doing some of this online streaming. Do you want to partner with us? And Blockbuster said, what? You're such a small company. Like, I don't even know who you are. Like, go away. And so 10 years later, Blockbuster went bankrupt. Netflix is like one of the most valuable companies in Silicon Valley right now. What went wrong here? It was this bias of like confidence bias, confirmation bias, where Blockbuster thought, well, I've been so successful all along, I just have to keep doing what I'm doing always to continue my success. So that's where strategy can often get very tricky, because strategy is about anticipating what the future is. And the way the brain works is, if you've only experienced success, if you haven't experienced failure, you'll think you'll continue to experience success, which is what Blockbuster thought. But it ended up being a big failure there, because they didn't anticipate that the internet revolution will change everything and make them bankrupt.
Okay,
Uh,
I am sure that these three examples which you have given, first is of Tata's Nano. That Tata's Nano was a very, very bit high, you can say, by the media. Everybody was talking, not only in India, abroad, everywhere. And according to Ms. Kannan, the car was talked everywhere, and they thought that we need not to spend anything, and they have not spent a single rupee on the advertisement and all those publicity which is required for launching a vehicle. But because of the hype created, but when it was launched, they what they wanted, they expected, it could not succeed, because the reason was that the mindset, the brain set of the people is that it's a cheap car, and that's why that was an emotional decision by the citizens or the people, and they have taken a wrong decision, although the car was very good, having everything. But according to Ms. Kannan, because this is a behavior thing, and the people feel that because they are thinking from the emotional side, if we have to buy a car, we should have a good car, because it's our prestige, and that's why the nano car could not work, and that now they have, I think, they closed down everything. Second example she has given, that it's not like this, that every time the behavior decision or the emotional decisions are wrong. She gave the example of JRD Tata when he was denied an entry in the hotel by the Britishers. He said, okay, I will construct a hotel for my Indians, and that's why the hotel was constructed. Although I still have a feeling whether he was JRD Tata or who constructed this hotel. Ms. Kannan, I cannot vouch right now about the JRD, because was he there at that time? I'm not sure. But one thing I know about that Mumbai Taj Hotel, which I just want to mention in a second, that the hotel was constructed, and if you have visited that hotel, the architect who constructed it, he went to for holidays, and he has given the work to his assistant. Unfortunately, those assistants who were standing from the other side of the table, they saw the drawing, they constructed it, and the hotel is facing, the front side is facing the back side. If you happens to go anytime to Mumbai, please go to the back side of the hotel. There you will see the real beauty of the front side of the hotel, which is on the back side. And that is just, I wanted to add this thing, that sometimes brain work in a different way. They have not seen that the main architect was standing on the other side of the table, so the drawing has to be changed. So anyway, that is. And the third example which she gave was about the Blockbuster and the Netflix. When the Netflix was very, very small company 20 years back, that Blockbuster says, why they went to Blockbuster, who were renting the DVDs, and they said, no, we are not interested. You are a very small fry. And today, now the Netflix is one of the most prestigious and a valuable company in Silicon Valley, and Blockbuster is bankrupt. So according to her, the behavior, the decision which you are taking are from your brain and your success. You do not want to do anything disruptive. You feel, no, we are successful, we have to go like this. But according to her, you have to change your strategy time and time, again and again. Don't take decisions from your brain, and then only you will remain on top and you will be successful. So Ms. Kannan, now you tell me, you have said this is for work. Do you think this type of behavioral strategy also applicable on our personal life? Please unmute.
Yeah, definitely. I think behavioral strategy is totally applicable even in personal life. So, in fact, most of its application is it sort of helps you become better thinkers. So, imagine if you're trying to shop for a house and you're looking at different interest rates. So, one thing that the way the mind works is if you're comparing different brochures from different banks, say State Bank, Yes Bank, Axis Bank, your mind will not look at like the true calculations or the true cost. Your mind will look at the most beautiful brochure, or the salesman who is the most friendly to you, and it'll go and you will make a decision accordingly. So just knowing that your brain does that is will now stop you from doing that mistake. You have to set aside half an hour to do the mathematics behind this and try and identify which interest rate is going to be better for you. And similarly, from a personal finance planning standpoint, we often do what is urgent and important. For example, if we want to buy a fancy car or a fancy dress, immediately our mind will really like that. Our mind will force us into doing that. But other things like saving for the long term, or thinking of, do you want to invest in FD or do you want to invest in the stock market? Those decisions are more complex. It is difficult for the brain, and so the brain will not take those decisions, and so the brain will do what brings it happiness. So happiness is a new car, so the brain will just go do that, but that's not a very rational thing to do. I mean, I'm not saying don't buy cars. I'm saying, evaluate if that is the right decision for that right point of time. So these are several ways in which you can be self-aware of how your brain works. Another thing is like gender discrimination or caste discrimination. So your brain, for example, in India, there's a lot of correlation between skin color and success. So the moment you see a dark person, you think that dark person will not speak English. You think a dark person will not be as intelligent. I'm not trying to generalize, but there are a lot of studies that do say there's a lot of implicit bias in the brain, where you think fair people are more trustworthy, fair people are more reliable, and they can be trusted. So every time your brain thinks that, like, stop for a second, question your assumption, realize that your brain is making a very big mistake, and evaluate rationally who that person truly is, and stop looking at their gender or their skin color. So these are all just some practical examples. Another practical example is like spouse. So a survey done with spouses in a marriage, it showed that if you ask the spouse, both the husband and wife, especially if both are in a dual career household, if you ask who does more work at home, the husband says, I do more than 50% of the work at home. The wife says, I do more than 50% of the work at home. But clearly, both of them cannot be doing more than 50% of the work, right? So that's because your brain tends to think like, you do more work than the others. And this is true in an office setting, in a team as well, where your brain often thinks, oh, you do more, that you are doing more than the others. So question that assumption, and think about, think from the other person's perspective, like what are they contributing, what are they doing. So these are all just some very quick practical examples of how you can apply this. One small thing that I did in my house, all the chips and snacks, I will stash it in a very high shelf. All the fruits and the healthy things, I'll keep it at a level that my 6-year-old can go and access. So that way, I'm nudging him towards, when he's hungry, instead of he cannot reach the chips, so he'll take the banana, which is more at his reach instead. So these are just some small ways of nudging. Another thing I used to do, I lose my keys all the time. So I just created a little basket at the front door. Every time I see the basket, I know I have to put the keys in there. And so just having those little visual cues and reminders in the house has contributed a lot to, not making those simple mistakes that the brain does, which is when you walk in with your key, your brain is thinking of something else, you leave the key somewhere else. So that's how you can train your brain.
Okay, so according to Ms. Kannan, we can apply these things in our day-to-day life. And according to her, because we are doing so many things we are taking decisions which are not correct. We are just taking decisions because of emotional. She has given an example that if you want to buy some house, you are seeing the loans, the interest rate. You are not bothered which is better. You will just see the who is familiar to you, the salesperson who's coming for the marketing, or the which brochure is more attractive. While you have to sit, you have to work out which is in the long run you have to pay less because of the interest rate. That is one she said. She again said that there are many decisions which you have to think, and then only you take the decision, not that you are just taking the decision because it is good emotionally, you are finding that it is good. But now, Miss Kannan, tell me, you are saying the CEOs are doing always mistake. You are saying the spouses also have the problem. They always say that they are doing more than 50% work. Now it's very difficult for you. Do you think that, or according to you, in your company, the CEO is coming to the you or anyone who is in this behavioral strategy, discuss with them, and they then only take the decision, or they are taking the decision and then you are analyzing, you are saying, no, Mr. CEO, you have done wrong. What you say about this?
That
Just
is a great question, and probably the most difficult question that you've asked. So I definitely I've worked across several companies and I see a trend. So there are many companies which have very good processes to weed out some of these mistakes. So in Silicon Valley particularly, I would say there's a lot of emphasis on data. There's a lot of emphasis on making sure different people give their opinions. So another bias that often happens in decision making is if you have all your executives in one room and you're the CEO and you say, I've taken this decision, how many of you agree with me? Nobody will raise their hands and say they disagree. Everybody will sort of like, they don't want to be the only one to disagree. So everybody will agree, and that results in wrong decision making. Whereas, so one thing that, the CEO can do in order to prevent that is have separate conversations with people, or make people email or take a survey separately anonymously if they when they want to disagree with decision making. So that way you're creating an environment where people can speak up. So a lot of work that I do in behavioral strategy is how do you set up these processes in a large organization to make sure that your decision making process is more reliable. And many times, like if you're a small company, 100 people, 200 people, the CEO they don't have a large analytics team. They don't have time, and the mind space or the energy or the money required to do these elaborate decision making things. And so they have to go with their gut feeling. Right, and so but at least in many large enterprises or in the government, where you have the prime minister taking very important strategic decisions for the company, it's if you want to do what is right for the society, it's important to have some of these structures in place that aids your decision making. It's often very hard for you to think like, what mistake am I doing? But it's easy for you to point out mistakes that others are doing from a behavioral science standpoint. So if it's a couple in a family, you can hold each other accountable, saying, when I make these heuristic mistakes, you point it out, and when I do this, you point it out, rather than it's hard for me to stop and say, okay, I've made this decision which is wrong.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Kannan, for saying that the CEO has to consult each and everyone separately, not in the joint meeting, because nobody will dare to say no to the CEO. And even in the family, one should try to sort out mutually and say that you have done this, I have done this thing. That is a very good thing which you are saying. Now, but tell me, you are you have become a very important part of a company. Now, what is your plan for future? Would you like to start your own company? Because if you, a behavioral strategist, can take a decision because you know you can take a decision coolly, and your decisions are all definitely far better than those decisions taken in under emotion. So are you planning to start your own company in future?
I don't know if my decisions will be right. As I said, the more I become an expert in this, my book says experts make the most mistakes. So as I become an expert, I'll become more confident, and I'll end up
Mm.
making more mistakes probably. But I think you ask a very critical question, and the goal is to eventually do something in the space of education where I can apply these concepts of behavioral science, understand that every mind works very differently. Every mind is unique. As of now in the education system, if you think about it, it's like you have different it's like you have a fish, you have an elephant, you have a monkey, and you make all of these people climb a tree. So that's how the education system currently is, right? So there's a lot of opportunity to bring in customized education, understand how the brain works further, how learning happens in the brain, and use a lot of like AI and machine learning to tailor custom educational solutions to different individuals. So learning itself, I think in like 10 years, 20 years from now, it should look very different than 50 kids still sitting in a classroom with a teacher not paying attention. I think that model of education should change. Whether a child is in a rural area or in a privileged family, all children should have equal access to sort of customized education. And that is the space where I want to start up eventually, once I gain enough experience and knowledge in the field.
Very nice, Ms. Kannan. And what you said is that according to Ms. Kannan, she is, yes, planning to do, if in future she will come in the education sector. She says there is a lots of scope, because right now the education system, especially I think in India, you are mentioning, is not that perfect, which should be, because here everyone, or whether the child is understanding or not understanding, they are sitting in a class of 50 students and one teacher. But according to her, everyone should get the same opportunity to explore the education. And I would like to inform you, the government of India recently came out with a new education policy, and the emphasis is on this only, that they want to change the setup which was earlier, the pressure which all the children, I'm sure you might have also faced when you were a student, with a heavy your class, that school bags which you used to carry at that time. Now the government of India has come out with a new education policy when they want to change all these things, and when they want that the students should start thinking themselves, not that they should be part whatsoever the teacher will say and they agree. So that I am sure that change has started. But as you rightly said, yes, if we will have such type of persons like you in the policy making, definitely it will be a boon even for the education sector. Now, my last question to you is, what is your message to youth and young generation, and especially the women? Because in India, as you know, still we are not that much developed, although we have the President of India, we have Prime Minister of India, we have Lok Sabha Speaker, we also have the earlier the Defense Minister, now the Finance Minister, she's also a woman. So, but still, there are in rural areas, we are still very orthodox. So what is your message? And especially to youth, they are looking for you, because now you have become like a youth icon for them. Because in such a young age, you have beaten all the CEOs and whatnot, all the top companies. Although your company is also one of the leading company, but you being a such a young, I must use, no, I will not use the word woman, I can say even the girl or woman, you have achieved so much. So what is your message to the youth and the young generation?
So my message to I'll start with the youth of today, is never give up on your dream. Constantly work hard towards it. So from a behavioral science standpoint, the advice that I want to leave you with is: no one's born intelligent or smart or dumb. So that's a very wrong way to think of who you are. So I know in schools and in Indian households, you grow up with a narrative of, you're intelligent or you're not, or you're capable or you're not. So disregard all those labels. Know that the brain is very plastic. It can be molded just with your attention, with your focus. So any area that you pick, if you have a lot of attention focus, if you put your hard work and mind into that, your neurons will develop more and more in that area, and you will automatically become better and better, and you will become an expert in that area. So there is no such thing like I can't do mathematics, I can't do science, like I'm not intelligent, I'm not smart. Like get rid of all those labels, because growth mindset is very important, where you tell yourself failure is just a stepping stone. And because of that, like you'll always keep trying. So having that ability to try and know that everything is a learning opportunity, putting that effort towards that will definitely get you to the level of expertise, and to the level of intelligence or smartness that you want in a field. So there's no substitute for hard work. And their behavioral science has proof in it. It's not just a general, moral story that we pass on from ancestors, but I have proof from behavioral science for that. And the
Okay.
last one is
Yeah.
for women. I just want to say, there's nothing. You are no different from men, so nothing should really stop you and hold you behind. There are lots of networks. So, for instance, I lead the US chapter of Power Women of India, and this network is to facilitate many women, who are in roles like this to work together and support one another. So, let's always support womenhood and drive towards better outcomes.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kannan, for giving so much good advice to the young generation as well as to the women of India. And I'm sure that your such type of behavioral science will definitely give benefit to all of us. And today's program, which is very, very enlightened, and the way you have spoken, yes, you deserve to be woman of the year 2020. Heartily congratulations and thank you very much for joining today. So you have seen, viewers, how a young girl from India has achieved and reached to the peak, and she has been declared as the woman of the year 2020, and with beating almost all the top company CEOs. This is called real hard work, and we are really proud that we are Indians, and she has proved it. So we are, and she has given so many tips today. I'm sure you are all benefited, and you are going to, and especially to the young generation, please accept it and behave in such a way that you can also achieve. Why not? Everyone can become like her. Thank you very much, Ms. Kannan, for joining us in today's program, which was live telecasted on V4 News, Malnadu TV, uh, as well as Global TV, News Gaon Se, Samvad Sarokar News, and it was also shown live on Facebook and YouTube. And our endeavor is to bring new and new topics every day. And tomorrow our topic is in the media conference with Lal Goel is physical education and sports in NEP, that is New Education Policy 2020. And our guests are the Professor Dr. P. Subramania, Honorable Vice Chancellor, Mangalore University. We have Wing Commander Arjit Ghosh, former Ranji Trophy cricketer, coach and match referee, and as well as we have Mr. Satik Roy, Head of Operations, Joy Root Cricket Academy, Faculty, Flinders University, Adelaide, Australia. We also have Mr. Grant Jensen, provisional cricketer and coach, multiple Ironman finisher, Cape Town, South Africa. So please tune in tomorrow at 10:30 to join media conference with Lal Goel. Thank you very much, all the viewers, and thank you, Ms. Charnya Kanyan, again for giving so much detailed reply, as well as you have given all the tips. I'm sure we all will be benefited by that.